Go ahead, open Windows settings and start turning things off. Turn off optional diagnostic data, turn off tailored experiences, turn off advertising-related personalization. Disable the settings that seem designed to stop Windows from collecting information about you. And then sit back and ask yourself one very simple question. Did Windows actually stop tracking you? Because here's where things get interesting. Microsoft gives you privacy controls, and those controls absolutely matter. But turning off optional data collection does not turn Windows into a completely silent operating system. Some diagnostic data remains required, some Microsoft services operate separately, and depending on what features you use, Windows can still communicate with Microsoft servers. So this isn't really a story about a secret switch that secretly spies on everyone. It's something more complicated. It's a story about how much information an operating system needs, wants, and continues to process even after you tell it to collect less. And once you understand how that system works, Windows starts looking very different. Let's go back for a moment, because Windows telemetry wasn't created yesterday. Microsoft has been collecting diagnostic information from Windows machines for decades, largely because an operating system running on millions of wildly different computers is almost impossible to maintain without feedback. Think about the problem Microsoft has. One person has an Intel processor, another has AMD, one has an NVIDIA GPU, another has integrated graphics. One machine has 16 gigabytes of RAM, another has 4. Different drivers, different applications, different hardware, different updates, different configurations. When something breaks, Microsoft needs to know what happened. That's where diagnostic data comes in. Microsoft itself says required diagnostic data helps identify problems related to hardware and software configurations, crashes, compatibility, updates, and device performance. And honestly, that part makes sense. If Windows crashes on one specific graphics driver, Microsoft needs some way to discover the pattern. But here's where the privacy conversation gets complicated. Windows doesn't operate with a simple tracking on or tracking off switch. Microsoft separates diagnostic data into categories. In current versions of Windows 11, there is required diagnostic data, which Microsoft describes as the minimum information needed to help keep Windows secure, updated, and functioning properly. Then there's optional diagnostic data, which can include much more detailed information about the device, its configuration, application usage, performance, browsing-related information in Microsoft browsers, and other activity. And this distinction is incredibly important because when you turn off optional diagnostic data, you're not turning off every connection between your computer and Microsoft. You're reducing the amount and type of diagnostic information Windows sends. That's a very different thing. And now we get to the part that most people never think about. Look at what Microsoft says can be included in Windows diagnostic information. Device configuration, operating system version, hardware characteristics, software and driver information, performance data, crash information, application information connected to errors, update information. And under optional diagnostic data, Microsoft's documentation goes considerably further, describing categories that can include product and service usage, browsing history in Microsoft browsers, and even inking, typing, and speech-related diagnostic information. Microsoft says this information is used for purposes such as troubleshooting, improving Windows, developing products, and in certain circumstances, providing personalized recommendations, ads, or other experiences. Now pause right here, because this is where the entire story can easily get distorted. Is Microsoft secretly recording every single thing you do on your computer? That's not what the documentation says. Is every piece of diagnostic information personally identifying you by name? Microsoft describes much of this information as pseudonymized, and Microsoft provides a diagnostic data viewer that lets users inspect the diagnostic data their Windows device is sending. So the more accurate question isn't, is Windows secretly spying on me? The better question is, how much information does Windows still need to communicate after I choose the most restrictive privacy options available to me? And that question gets surprisingly uncomfortable, because even when you choose the lowest consumer diagnostic level, Windows doesn't simply become an offline operating system. Microsoft says required diagnostic data can still include information needed to understand the device and its configuration. Diagnostic events can contain details such as the operating system version and build, device information, event timing, identifiers used to correlate events, and connectivity information. Microsoft also documents diagnostic systems involving crash reporting and telemetry components that communicate with Microsoft services. In other words, turning down telemetry isn't the same as disconnecting Windows from Microsoft. And here's the twist. Some of the information Windows collects isn't even about tracking in the way most people imagine tracking. Microsoft may need to know that a particular update failed on a particular class of hardware. It may need to know that an application crashes under a specific configuration. It may need to know whether a device is ready for an update or whether a driver is creating compatibility problems. Without that feedback, Microsoft would essentially be flying blind across an enormous ecosystem. But the problem is that the same operating system also contains services designed around personalization, recommendations, advertising, cloud synchronization, search, AI, and Microsoft's broader online ecosystem. And suddenly, the line between diagnostics and connected experience becomes much harder for an average user to understand. This is where Windows 11 becomes especially interesting. Your computer isn't just an operating system anymore, it's increasingly a gateway to Microsoft services. Windows Search can connect you to online results. OneDrive connects your files to the cloud. Microsoft Edge connects browsing to Microsoft services. The Microsoft Store connects applications and purchases to Microsoft's account system. Copilot and other AI-powered experiences connect Windows to cloud-based processing. Your Microsoft account can connect settings, subscriptions, files, applications, and services across devices. Each individual feature can have a legitimate reason for communicating with the cloud, but when you put all of them together, something bigger emerges. Windows isn't really designed around the idea that your PC should be an isolated machine. It's designed around the idea that your PC should be a connected Microsoft platform. And that's a massive difference. Because once your operating system becomes a platform for online services, data becomes incredibly valuable. Microsoft can use telemetry to understand which features are working, which ones are failing, which hardware configurations are causing problems, and which products people are actually using. Microsoft says diagnostic information helps improve Windows and related products and services. And for users who enable tailored experiences, certain diagnostic information can also be used for recommendations, tips, ads, and promotions. That's the business side of the story. Microsoft doesn't need Windows to be a traditional advertising product in the way a social network is. Windows itself is valuable because it sits underneath everything you do on the computer. And that position gives Microsoft something incredibly powerful: a massive stream of information about how its software behaves across a huge range of hardware and software environments. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Microsoft actually gives you tools to see some of this information. Windows has a diagnostic data viewer specifically designed to let users review diagnostic information their device is sending. That's a pretty significant admission that the data exists and that users should have some visibility into it. But how many average Windows users have ever opened that tool? How many people even know it exists? And how many people could look at a long list of diagnostic events and realistically understand what every field means? That's the gap between technical control and practical control. A setting can exist without the average person truly understanding what it changes. And this isn't unique to Microsoft. Apple, Google, Amazon, Meta, and practically every major technology company operates enormous data processing systems. Modern software depends on cloud infrastructure, analytics, security systems, crash reporting, personalization, and remote services. The difference is that Windows occupies an unusually powerful position because it is the operating system sitting underneath your applications, files, settings, and hardware. And that brings us to Linux. On a Linux desktop, the philosophy can be very different. You can choose your distribution, your desktop environment, your browser, your services, and often exactly what runs in the background. You can build an extremely minimal system if you want. You can also go in the opposite direction and connect it to dozens of cloud services. The important difference is the degree of control. Linux generally treats the operating system more like something you assemble and manage, while Windows increasingly behaves like a complete ecosystem delivered to you as a finished platform. But there's a catch. Linux isn't a magical privacy button. You can install applications that collect plenty of information. You can use cloud services that track activity. You can configure a Linux machine badly. And for many everyday users, Windows remains easier because the software they need, the games they play, the applications their employers require, and the hardware they own are already built around it. So switching to Linux isn't really the point. The point is control. Because if you don't like one part of Windows, how much freedom do you actually have to remove it? You can turn off optional diagnostic data. You can limit personalization. You can delete diagnostic data through Windows privacy controls. Microsoft even provides enterprise policies that allow organizations to restrict diagnostic collection more aggressively. But required diagnostic data remains part of the Windows model, and other Microsoft services have their own data and privacy controls. And this is where the future gets even more interesting. Windows is becoming more AI-driven, search is becoming more intelligent, Copilot-style experiences are becoming more deeply integrated, cloud services are becoming more important. Microsoft wants Windows to be more than a place where applications run. It wants Windows to become the interface through which you interact with Microsoft's entire ecosystem. And AI makes data even more valuable. An operating system that understands what applications are running, what hardware you have, what problems are occurring, and how people interact with its features can potentially become much better at predicting what users need. That could mean better troubleshooting, better security, better recommendations, and more personalized experiences. But it also raises a question that is going to become harder to avoid. How much information should an operating system know about you? Because 10 years ago, the computer was mostly a tool. Today, it's becoming a connected service platform. And tomorrow, it could become an AI assistant that constantly understands the context of what you're doing. That's a completely different privacy equation. So the next time you open Windows settings and start turning privacy switches off, don't think of it as a simple battle between tracking on and tracking off. The reality is more complicated. Some data collection is optional. Some is required for Microsoft's stated diagnostic and security purposes. Some information is connected to individual Microsoft services rather than Windows telemetry itself. And the more services you connect, the more complicated the overall picture becomes. That's the uncomfortable part. Microsoft isn't necessarily hiding the fact that Windows collects diagnostic information. In fact, Microsoft publishes detailed documentation explaining what categories of data can be collected and why. The real problem is that almost nobody reads it. Most people just see a switch labeled optional diagnostic data, turn it off, and assume the conversation is over. It isn't. The conversation is just beginning. Because the real question isn't whether Windows collects data. We already know it does. The real question is whether users understand exactly what they're agreeing to, what they can actually disable, what remains necessary for Windows to function, and how much control they truly have over an operating system that is increasingly connected to the company that built it. And maybe that's the bigger lesson here. Privacy on a modern computer isn't one button. It's an ecosystem. So the next time you turn off Windows tracking, don't just watch the switch change from on to off. Watch what Windows continues doing afterward. Because that's where the real story begins. If you found this deep dive worth your time, make sure to subscribe for more tech stories that look simple on the surface, but get a lot more complicated once you start pulling the thread.